Tanya Plibersek's decision last week to effectively ban a $1 billion gold mine because of secret Aboriginal business is a scandal that's just getting worse. Today, the Albanese government's Environment Minister came under more fire at the Daily Telegraph Bush Summit for banning the mine's planned tailings dam, which was critical to the project. Now, Plibersek refused to go to that Bush Summit, turned down an invitation. She had ignored local traditional owners near Orange, New South Wales, who said this dam wasn't on a sacred site. Plibersek listened instead to an artist now identifying as a local Wiradjuri elder, although this woman used to identify with another tribe, and listened to this historian, also identifying as Aboriginal, and about 16 other dissidents, most of whom haven't been named, who claimed the dam was on a sacred site. Well, one Wiradjuri elder, acknowledged Wiradjuri elder, Roy R.C., a former chairperson of New South Wales Aboriginal Land Council, blasted Plibersek at the Bush Summit.
And I'm very, very annoyed because how are we going to close the gap? The biggest killer of Aboriginal people in this country isn't alcohol and drugs. It's absolute poverty and welfare dependency. And here we got a minister that's knocking back $1 billion mine that could create economic empowerment for my people.
Now, Plibersek today told journalists, hey, this site is sacred, but she still won't tell us why she ignored the traditional owners or why it's sacred. She even insisted these dissidents were somehow the traditional owners.
The Wiradjuri Traditional Owners Central West Aboriginal Corporation is the group that I've acted to. They have asked me to act to protect this area as culturally significant, and I've taken their advice that it is culturally significant for them. This is the same group of people that the previous Environment Minister Susan Ley listened to.
But the mine owner was also at the Bush Summit and said Plibersek was dead wrong.
The 400 hectares I've protected are the headwaters and springs of the Billubula River, which are significant to local Wiradjuri traditional owners.
Joining me is the panel, James McPherson from the Late Debate here on Sky News at 10 p.m, and Evelyn Ray, farmer, Sky News regular, former policeman, all sorts of things. James, how bad is this looking for the government?
Yeah, this is pretty bad, Andrew, on a number of levels. Firstly, this is a government that promised us transparency, remember that? And yet Tanya Plibersek won't even explain the reasons for the decision that she's made. This is a government that promised accountability, and yet Tanya Plibersek preferred to be in Queensland than with the people of Orange, explaining her decision to the locals whom this will affect. This is a government that bangs on and on continually about social cohesion, and yet they're pitting one Indigenous group against another Indigenous group, and they're pitting Indigenous people against non-Indigenous people. And finally, this is a government that promised they would govern in the national interest, but no one can believe that this decision by Tanya Plibersek is for any reason other than to shore up votes in her own Sydney electorate, where she's threatened by the Greens. A similar decision to what they've made regarding anti-Semitism and immigrants coming from Gaza. It's less about the national interest and much more about shoring up their domestic political power. So on a number of fronts, this is all bad for the government that just can't seem to get clear air because they keep making own goals.
Evelyn, I thought it was really refreshing to hear an undoubted Wiradjuri elder, Roy R.C., making the critical link that is so often forgotten between Aboriginal welfare and saying yes to those projects that actually earn money, particularly, well, gold mines, or you could name anything, uranium mine, which the government banned the other day as well. That needs to be stressed, doesn't it?
Oh, it certainly does. It seems at the moment that, you know, that they're hurting each other, they're hurting themselves. And it's really sad to see because, you know, like it was said, this could really help a lot of the local people economically in that particular area. And, you know, I think just the secrecy part of this whole thing as well doesn't sit well. It leaves a bad smell in the air for the locals, for everybody, you know, watching the train wreck from home. But, you know, if I was an Indigenous Australian, I would be so offended at the handling of this, that basically processes mean absolutely nothing here, and that they can weaponize, you know, Aboriginal culture, Aboriginal history like this, because unfortunately, this is what this sort of precedent does. How can you confirm things if one group is saying something against another group? Which group gets priority or authority over the other? And this is the mess of the whole thing, and it's not going to get any better unless there is a process and unless that process is honoured and adhered to. But I just feel bad for the people in the area, the Indigenous people who are unfortunately going to be missing out on economic growth, on potential job opportunities and all kinds of things because they can't seem to come to a, collective conclusion on all of this. And shame on the Australian politicians who are allowing the weaponisation of these sorts of things to play out in front of them and do nothing about it.
And tend to keep Aborigines as sort of museum pieces, imprisoned by the dreaming, not looking at the future and how to advance the people.